offensive play caller, you can completely control the game. And beside that couple year stretch, which was bad, when I think Rob Ryan was their defensive coordinator in New Orleans, and they were going 7-9, even though their offense was setting records. When they've had good defenses, they dominated. They were consistent 10 to 12 win team in the NFL. That's what Sean Payton's record is when the defense is solid. So if their defense is solid, which it was the second half of last year, and clearly, I think removing Russell Wilson, and this is why I'm out on the Steelers. That thing that you take in is more than just that missed third down throw. It's all this other stuff, which in fairness, I don't know how much Russell brings it. It's just there now. It's just part of the deal.
Yeah.
And you remove that, you get this young, hungry guy, you get this chip on the shoulder coach. The Raiders naming Gardner Minshew, that they're not going to be any good. The Chargers just going to have some injury problems, and their depth is going to be very questionable.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to think Denver could finish second in this division?
No.
He clearly likes this team. They like their rookie class. They got some good wide receivers watching them play. I mean, I don't think it's inconceivable they go 9-8.
Bo Nix played with Troy Franklin. Troy averaged 105 yards per game, 14 touchdowns. They played together in college. Like, think about this. He's 24. Drake May's 21. Offensive coach. I think between Mims, Cortland Sutton, and Troy Franklin, they have a good tight end, two capable backs. I'm like, that's at least average to slightly above average. I mean, look at Dallas Cowboys. They're completely dependent on CeeDee Lamb staying healthy or they're screwed. Yeah. So to me, I look at Denver and I'm like, every single year, it was Houston last year, there's a pop team. And I'm watching Bo Nix, and I've had a couple of texts with Sean Payton. It's not lost on me that a former NFL quarterback that I was talking to in the building at Fox several months ago said, just remember, Drake, Caleb, and Jaden have defensive coaches. He goes, I don't care how talented they are. And this guy came into the league years ago and had a defensive coach. He said, it matters. Like, you're nervous. He said a defensive coach. I mean, Mark Sanchez told me years and years ago, it's like, the reality is an offensive coach, you talk at night. You text, you're texting. Defensive coaches think differently. Their buddies are defensive coaches. Their favorite players, or Belichick's favorite player is Lawrence Taylor. It's not Tom Brady. Yeah. So I think, I just think Denver's better. PFF has their personnel near the bottom of the league, and I'm like,
why'd Peyton Manning love Adam Gase? Because he could text him at 1:00 in the morning, and he'd text him right back, and they'd be talking football. These offensive guys, I saw with Andy Reid, sleeps like 3 hours a night. He's just in the whiteboard, just doing these guys. It's like a creative. The mentality it's night and day different. Now, some of the defensive guys are just such natural leaders. The aggressiveness it's a different personality. But yeah, I mean, I think the offensive play caller is number one guy you'd ever want running, especially in this modern day football. But who are the options for pop teams? Right, it'd have to be a team, a non an AFC West team, right? Not the Chiefs. So it'd be the Raiders, the Chargers, or the Broncos. I think most people are out on the Raiders when you watch their quarterback situation. Listen, I'm a Jim Harbaugh diehard, but they just got a ton of injuries. They got guys that have always injured. That makes me nervous. Their quarterback just got out of a boot. The Jets, who we talked about, I would say are pretty are walking a very, very tight line. They could shatter in front of our eyes immediately. The Steelers, I got coming back to earth. They were already a playoff team. Same with the Cleveland Browns, because their quarterback situation just scares the crap out of me. I think it's wide open for a team like the Broncos to kind of sneak up on people for sure.
Okay, so I played a little bit of this clip before, but not this other back half, and I really want to drill down on a few things here that I think are really, really fascinating, and I don't know if it's necessarily being discussed. Now, first off, the over under for wins for the Denver Broncos is 5.5, and I really think a lot of people are sleeping on the Denver Broncos. And to be clear, when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about betting or anything like this. I'm just talking about how many wins can they have, how good can they be, not necessarily like, oh, take the over and place a bet. That's not at all what I'm personally getting at. I just want to emphasize that. But so for the Denver Broncos, it is really fascinating that people are so low on them. They don't believe in Bo Nix. They don't believe in Sean Payton. And they just don't believe in the rest of that roster. And as John was kind of also discussing, is that defense even started to get really good near the end of last season. And that, to me, is going to be fascinating. We've talked about this with other teams and other quarterbacks, but not in the way of like a Bo Nix. If Bo Nix is clearly an incredibly smooth operator, that's just so obvious that, and we've seen it in preseason, we've seen it in college. If they are, and I believe in Bo Nix big time. If that defense is legit for the Broncos, and now you're asking Bo Nix to be incredibly conservative and just to operate like an elementary offensive approach to the game, oh my God, can they have such legitimate success? It's gonna. I think they will be the team that pops. I think they will absolutely shock everyone. I'm not saying that Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos are going to be able to make it to the AFC Championship game like the 49ers did with Brock Purdy, to the NFC when Brock Purdy was his first time play when he came in for Garoppolo or anything like that. I'm not necessarily saying that. I mean, it's technically possible. Who really knows? But it's just the fact that the idea, because I've been looking at this so heavily through what can Bo Nix and Sean Payton do offensively, and I definitely neglected the defensive side of the ball, and it's just one of those things where if you can just ask the bare minimum from Bo Nix, I believe he will have like a 99% success rate when asking him to do the bare minimum. And again, it's to be very clear, I am not saying that he can't do more than the bare minimum. I think Bo Nix can have tremendous success, but it's just when your team and your quarterback is so supported that when you're asking him to essentially do practice level stuff, then the success rate for him, the hit rate for him is going to be through the roof. His mistakes are going to be so minimized. He will virtually be set up to never be the limiting factor for the team. You understand what I'm saying? And so if that's the case, then the Broncos are going to be in tremendous shape. Tremendous shape. And the 5.5 seems woefully low. And then you have John Milkoff saying that they'll be potentially like 9-8. And is 9-8 a playoff team this year? I'm not sure. Honestly, I really don't know. It's just definitely playoff adjacent. Playoff fringe. I don't think every team's going to be winning 13, 12 games and making the playoffs. So it's going to be really interesting. It would be fascinating if the Broncos can sneak into the playoffs. I think that would just shock a ton of people. And it seems like no one is even remotely considering that the Broncos will be legitimately competitive, right? As we can see, the over-under is 5.5. And the other thing, though, I want to point out, though, that as John was saying about some of these teams, because there always does have to be a pop team, a team that was not very good last year or not good enough last year and is now legit. We've seen that every single year since like the beginning of football. When he was pointing out the Chargers, the Jets, I'm not sure if he brought up another team, those teams are not as resilient, right? They're maybe not as deep. And if they run into, say, like an injury of Herbert or Aaron Rodgers, the team will fall apart. They will be nothing. Watching Zach Wilson operate in preseason, I was very, very, very impressed. Now, I'm not trying to put an injury on anyone, but to me, even if Bo Nix went down, something frequently we saw with J.J. McCarthy, right? It happens all the time. I think even Zach Wilson would be successful in this offense. I really, really do. I mean, he made some beautiful throws. And at the very least, if Bo Nix is really just rocking and rolling and it is so obvious, I believe that they'll be able to move on from Zach Wilson. They'll be able to trade him potentially midseason. I think Sean Payton was able to show to everyone, hey, Zach Wilson's actually a decent quarterback. Like, if your quarterback goes down, he's not a terrible option. He is not the quarterback that we saw with the Jets. That was just the Jets being the Jets. And then who knows what's on the market at that point, who's available. Is it a wide receiver? Who? I have no idea, right? I don't even want to make up names, but who is it? Who is it that would then potentially be able to make the Broncos even better this coming season? We've seen that plenty of times over the years in the NFL of these teams like trying to get out. The Minnesota Vikings did it just last season, I believe it was. So that's always an option as well. If they realize, hey, Bo Nix is amazing, and we can actually get something for Zach Wilson right now. A couple teams are desperate for a quarterback. Let's go. So I think the Broncos have a true potential to, when I say legit, it's hard to put it in like a more measurable way of like, what does that mean at the end of the day? And I think they will, at the end of the day, I think they will flirt with making the playoffs. I think they could potentially make the playoffs or just miss the playoffs, but I do not think the Broncos are going to have this year where it's obvious, oh, well, they're nothing. We could probably skip that game. I don't need to watch the Broncos play today. That's whatever. They're obviously going to lose. What are they, 0-6 right now? What are they, 1-9? Like, I don't see it unfolding that way at all. In fact, I think the Broncos are going to be incredibly exciting. I think Bo Nix should have a tremendous amount of momentum and a lot of hype around him after the first few games. And I think there's going to be a lot of great storylines. And we already know Sean Payton is absolutely ruthless in a positive way, I mean. And so he is coming. He does not want to be irrelevant in the NFL. He did not come back to the NFL to just be a guy who's winning 5-6 games a season. No, that is not who Sean Payton is. So better believe he is going to do everything he can to get the Denver Broncos, and Bo Nix for that matter, to be great today. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think that Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos are being slept on? And do you think the whole 5.5 games is way too low? And if it is, let me know what you think how many games do you think they'll win this year, and what do you think like realistic expectations are for the Denver Broncos? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and